Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and relax for the next hour as the CW Reno brings you Old Tales of Nevada. It's an hour of rich Nevada history and current-day success stories hosted by scholar, historian, and world-renowned gold and silver baron Hugh Roy Marshall. Brought to you by the Silverland Inn and Suites and the Marshall Mint.
Hello everybody, welcome to Old Tales of Nevada, past and present. Glad to have you with us this week. We have a great show in store. We're up here in the historic town of Dayton, Nevada. We'll be back with the whole story right after this message. Welcome back to Old Tales of Nevada, past and present. I'm John O'Brien, the moderator of the bunch we have here on the set today, and we've got a very stellar guest list today up here in Dayton, Nevada. We have, of course, Neil Cobb. He's our honorary curator from the Nevada Historical Society. I have to mention that 2 or 3 times during the show, you know, just to pay for his contract. So glad to have you with us, Neil, and thanks for bringing us up here to Dayton. Next to Neil is the Justice of the Peace for Dayton, and that's Camille Vecchiarelli.
Thank you.
And
it's a pleasure being here.
Oh, it's great to have you with us. We look forward to having some great conversation with you. And next to me is our good friend Barbara Peck. And Peck is her name and preservation's your game, you tell me, right?
Thank you.
Because you're VP of the Historical Society up here, and you've got some other titles we'll find out about as we go through the show. But glad to have everybody here. Neil, we always like to start with you because you have a role of being a publisher over there with Nevada in the West magazine, and you're also filling in for Hugh Roy Marshall, our benefactor.
Yeah, and I always enjoy filling in for Hugh Roy. He's the man that pays for all of the everything that we burn up. Yeah, all of the dollars that we spend. But he is a very, very proud Texan and a very, very proud Nevadan. And I kid him a lot about this, being able to successfully mix water and oil. But he does a good job, and he's very serious. And what his main focus was getting Nevada people to stand up and toot their horn just like they do in Texas, because we have a lot to be proud of. Right. We're very colorful and historically significant, and this is a wonderful, wonderful place to live. So sure. Hugh Roy, he has got a couple of commercial endeavors. And he's got the Marshall Mint up there in Virginia City. What is that, 96 or 97? 96
North C Street.
North C Street. First place you're going to catch when you're coming in from Reno into downtown metropolitan Virginia City. And it's going to be the last place that you're going to see as you exit.
Right.
It's got a beautiful, beautiful museum in there. It's got all of the artifacts for mining, any of the implements that it takes to mine. The photographs go with it, a 5-pound golden nugget sitting there, ore samples, just wonderful stuff. The other side of the facility is where the ladies have the estate jewelry. We have these wonderful ladies that are absolute experts on anything and everything that they're going to talk about. Plus, he's got all of the minted coins that they have up there, commemorative coins. We've got one on the Comstock that's just beautiful. Yeah. And then he's got a bit of a hotel down the hill. He calls it his charity.
Silverland Inn and Suites.
Yes, but it is a beautiful facility. It's been all remodeled. Got a big, beautiful swimming pool there. Friendly and very knowledgeable staff there also.
Yeah, check out the reservations.
Check out
847-4484.
Yeah, see, I always have
to
rely
I remember that.
I have to rely on you to bring that one in each time.
If you go there Sunday through Thursday, you get a great deal on rooms too.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, $69.
Go ahead, ask about it.
Yeah, so ask about it when you.
I get a chance to talk about my magazine.
Very quickly, yes.
There's 5 of us that put this thing together, and it's a history magazine, strictly history of the great state of Nevada, written by Nevada authors. And this issue that we have now, we're dipping into a little bit of the activity that's going to be happening for the sesquicentennial. And one of the articles is Chuck Weller, judge down in Reno. He is a historian and a very good one. Mm-hmm. And he's written an article on the Halsey saddle that was made at Bulls and Butler in downtown Reno. This was during World War II. But there's another one by Robin Hollibird on the mob movies. And of course, she is very knowledgeable on anything that happened there. But it's NevadaInTheWest.com. Please look us up.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's great. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you, John.
Anyway, we're here in Dayton, Nevada, and we're actually in the courthouse of Dayton, Nevada. But this is a very historic building to start with, right?
It is.
What do they call this building? Camille, you have the history on this.
It is. It's the Bluestone Building. The building was built in 1860, circa. Now, gold was discovered back in 1849, and there was a need for some buildings. So the Bluestone Building was built by Mr. F. Birdsall, and the walls are hand-quarried sandstone.
Yeah.
And the outside of the building is as it was.
Right.
We went ahead and came in and they filled in the cracks. But the building is what it looked like back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
So
And they
it's a
call it
beautiful
Bluestone building for what reason?
because they manufactured bluestone here. Now, bluestone was part of the recovery. They used the bluestone to recover gold and silver.
Okay, great.
So that's
how
what
many
it
years
was
did
used
it
for.
operate as that kind of place?
Well, I believe it was built in the 1860s, and by 1885, it was bankrupt.
Oh,
so
really?
they
Wow.
closed down. But it was a huge part of Dayton. It was one of the buildings. They had offices in here. They had the ponds in here. And then, of course, the boom was gone. The gold was gone. They went up to Virginia City. And so the building, after 1895, there's very little history on it.
Yeah.
But it sat here for over 100 years, empty, but looking beautiful.
Yeah.
And enough to catch the eye of one of our commissioners.
Super. Yeah, so the sandstone, I would imagine, was quarried right nearby.
I'm thinking it is.
Yeah.
I didn't get any history on that, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it was.
The way we were up at Bowers Mansion last week, and much of the stonework came right from behind them, right there in the Sierra,
Yeah.
in the foothills there. So I imagine the same thing happened here. So anyway, we're sitting in what they call Old Town Dayton. Is that correct?
The historical
So there's
district.
still some buildings left here. What would a person see if they came into the Old Town area? You have this building, the Bluestone Building, and are there other things like a schoolhouse, for example, or what?
Yes, there's still the remnants of two school buildings here. The original one was built in 1865. It's
Okay.
the first public school here in Dayton, a two classroom building. And it was used as a school building up until the more recent Dayton Elementary School was built in 1971. So it was utilized for quite a while.
Wow.
We also have the building that's used as the community center now, but it was the first high school in Dayton, and it was opened in 1918.
Okay. So Dayton was a rather important community because gold was discovered here first before it was up at the Comstock, as I
The gold
understand.
was discovered at the mouth of Gold Canyon.
Yeah, this is Gold Canyon right out
Right here.
in front of us
That's
here.
it.
That's fantastic. Somebody mentioned Gold Canyon last week to us, and I didn't know where it was. Now I know. So that is great. So anyway, you can come to this part of town, and there's probably ways to see some of these buildings, I suppose, right? If you come in.
We also have our original firehouse
Uh-huh.
that was, I believe, built in the 1870s. Our
Okay.
fire department is celebrating its 150th anniversary, volunteer fire department here
Amazing.
in Dayton. And so the first firehouse that housed the equipment and stuff was, I think, completed in the 1870s.
Okay.
And we have the train depot. We had a freight train that
Oh, really?
Carson, Colorado ran through. And so at the intersection of Highway 50 and Main Street,
Uh-huh.
we have the Dayton Depot facility there for
Okay.
people to visit. We also have several mercantile and other businesses that remain on Main Street and Pike Street.
Still there.
So the two main streets, when it was a booming town, were those two streets.
Yeah. Well, in
Pike
fact,
Street and Main
Dayton
Street.
was the county seat, right?
Yes, it was
In the
county
beginning.
seat,
Yeah.
yes.
And how long did that last?
Well, actually, in 1861, of course, Nevada formed its own territory. And during part of that process is they formed 9 separate counties, kind of like puzzles within the boundaries of the territory. Lyon County was one of them. And initially, from the research that I've done, they looked at many of these communities were in their early form of establishment and settlement, and Dayton and Silver City was actually being considered to form a county called Silver County, but that didn't follow through. It became Lyon County.
Okay.
And of course, it was named after General Nathaniel Lyon.
All right.
And that was 1861, 3 years before Nevada actually became a state.
It's funny how a lot of the towns had names of generals and colonels
Yes.
and that sort of thing because of the Civil War, I
Right.
suppose.
There was a little bit of a question mark on who was the first governor of the state of Nevada, and of course that would have to play off of who was the first governor handing the reins over to the statehood governor, and that of course is Governor Nye.
Governor Nye.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
Okay.
so-
Yeah. So anyway, big part of the political history began right here
Right.
in Dayton. Now I'm going to give you a chance, both of you here, to go against Genoa a little bit. You know, I see on some of your signs that this is
John,
the
you're-
first settlement in Nevada, but so does Genoa. So what is that controversy all about? Why do you make the claims you do as being the #1 settlement in Nevada?
Well, part of our history is based on the information that we learned from local diarists. And one of the people that wrote about this community, before it was a community actually, as she was traveling through, her name is Lucina Parsons. And she had traveled 2 years by wagon train with her husband and landed here in Dayton. And of course, there was quite a bit of activity in Gold Canyon. And at that time, it was prior to the naming of the town and those type of things. We're talking 1851. And the wagon train stopped here, and of course, most of the people, as they rested, did some prospecting in the canyon. Well, for the advantage that we have, that is the fact that Lucina kept a diary for 2 years and recorded her whole trip, including her visit here
Okay.
to Dayton. She was here probably close to 2 weeks before they moved on to their final destination in California. And so part of one of her entries clearly defines the fact that she watched the Reese wagon train as they passed through the valley here along the emigrant trail that was used at that time on their way to establish the community of Genoa.
Okay.
And so, of course, this led to quite a debate and discussion. Well, if there were those many miners living in the canyon working those claims, shouldn't that be the sign and the definition of early settlement here in Nevada?
You would think.
You would think
So-
so.
Yeah, because they had
Many
to have services, right, Neil?
Yes.
well, they had to have services, but I think the question came up, was there a structure, an actual
Sure.
stick
Well,
structure?
But I
And-
also believe that people make a settlement,
Well, it-
not a structure.
and it could very much be.
Right.
But you have one major ally, and that's Guy Rocha.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And Guy and I are very good friends, and here's a purest bona fide. Guy is, and so
So he's on
you know,
Date's
you
side.
know where
He's
my
definitely
thoughts
on
lay.
Date's
So.
And if you compare that part of history with other communities that recognize their early settlement, often it wasn't a permanent structure.
Right.
Even if you go back to the forming of Plymouth Plantation back east, many of those structures the first
Right.
year or two were temporary.
Yeah.
Places like Tonopah celebrates there, and it's based around the mining activities that took place in the community, which then formed the economy and the community
But
around those
there's
activities.
one thing about Dayton that it's not up for question. The first finding of any of the precious metals was here.
was here, and it was actually 2 years before Lucina Parsons arrived here.
Yes, yes.
In 1851.
And so that's
excuse me.
something to,
Yes.
let everybody else fight about this and that and the other thing. You already indicated where my sides
Right.
lay.
So here's
But
what
that
we'll
is
do. We'll be
very
like
un-
Fox
that- No,
News.
that's
We'll be
very
like Fox.
unique, being the first
Yes.
one to find
Yeah.
and start this whole thing.
This whole thing, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be like Fox News. We'll report and let other people decide, right?
Well, I was trying to talk you out of even posing that question.
Oh, no, we got to do that.
But see, he's the boss here, so he gets away with it.
Yeah. So gold and silver were the catalyst for the settlement of the area in the first place. And how long, there's a lot of ghost towns out there where, gold and silver happened and then it went away and then the town went away. What kept the forces moving in the right direction for Dayton?
Well, I think one of our major resource is water. If you look at the geographical arrangement here in the valley, which is about 10 miles long, it runs along the Carson River, runs
Okay.
right
Yeah.
through it. So we have 10 miles of river frontage.
Okay.
And so irrigation to the farms and ranches was an important part here, and we became the breadbasket really for the Comstaff.
Well,
Let me take a break, and then we'll come back and further on that particular subject. All right, so stay tuned. We'll be back with more Old Tales of Nevada, past and present, right after this. We're back here on Old Tales of Nevada, past and present. Glad to have you with us. As we mentioned before, we have Camille
Vecchiarelli.
Vecchiarelli. Thanks for helping me with that. She's the Justice of the Peace here in Dayton. And also Barbara Peck, who is a real historian, as we're finding out, of the area. And as we left our conversation, we were talking about your greatest resource, and I thought it would be gold and silver, but you're telling me it was water.
It was water.
Now, what the Carson River runs right through here, huh?
Right, about 10 miles of river frontage through the valley.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so not only did it help in the agricultural
Yeah.
economy of the community, and it extended once the mining and milling stopped, but it helped in the milling process.
Oh,
We
sure.
had 11 different mill sites along through the valley here.
Okay,
along the
so
river.
you had a lot of irrigation ditches running off the Carson. When I see the Carson in modern times, I don't see a lot of water in it most of the time. But back in those days, it was rather plentiful coming off the hill
Apparently
there.
very plentiful, and
Yeah.
of course, there's been a lot of diversion of the water before it comes into our valley now.
Right.
So we don't see the volume of water that initially did exist.
So besides the gold and silver mining, was there a lot of agriculture going on down here in the valley?
Well, they were supporting the communities, Virginia City, Gold Hill, Silver City, and Dayton, of course,
Right.
and some of the other surrounding areas, because we did have the water.
Right.
And as the populations grew and their needs grew along with that, we were providing the food that they needed, both for the households and for their animals and so on and so forth.
And you were saying also that the Immigrant Trail
The
came
Immigrant-
right through here. So
Sure,
I would
yeah.
imagine, let my imagination go wild here, is that this was a good stop-off spot after coming off the desert to just kind of refresh and rebuild the troops and get ready for that trek over the mountains.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. In fact, some of the earlier names, of course, you see, when you look at some of the early maps, you'll notice Gold Canyon
Yeah,
specified on the map before Dayton was named,
Mm-hmm.
but also other things like Ponderer's Rest and those type of things, because it was a perfect location for them to stop.
Yeah.
They had water for their animals and so on, so meet their needs.
were there a lot more trees and greenery than what we see today? Because you were telling us about the mining activity
Yeah.
here, and it was done in such a way that probably destroyed some of
It
the...
did, it did. Actually, some photos will show no vegetation, very little vegetation
Mm-hmm.
along the banks of the Carson River. And then others, of course, now if you drive along there, you'll see quite a few.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds, I don't know, tons probably of cordwood was taken from the surrounding Pine Knot Mountain Range and in this area. Over the years, they said sometimes in the peak of the mining industry, use smeltering for the mines and so on. Sometimes I've read accounts that 100 wagons a day would come down out of the Pine Knot Mountain Range
Wow.
to bring lumber down here
For the mining?
for the mining. Because the mill sites were along the banks, mostly along the banks of the river, they were floating logs down the river. You know, it was an easier way to transport those things and to have them easy access to what they needed. So
Right.
it was a very busy.
I can imagine
Place
so.
and-
Now, was there, because of the water being more plentiful down here, were there some large ranches, and is there anybody that we would recognize as far as ranch owners out here?
Well, still, we see, yes, at one point at our peak, apparently there were 27 ranches and farms here in the valley.
Really?
Providing the food and the animal food that was needed in the area. Now, we don't see that much. We've shrunk down to maybe 3 active farms.
Really?
We have the Minor Ranch, we have the Quillisees,
Quillis.
and we also have the Ritchie Ranch.
Okay, and
here
they've been
in the
around for a
valley.
long time.
They've been around for.
Now, we know the
30 years.
Quillisees from in the Reno area, too. They were involved, right, Neil, the Quillisees?
Yeah, one of the our guests that are sitting here waiting to be recognized mentioned that different families, but it was
Yeah.
the same
Right.
last name.
Right.
Same last name, okay.
Yeah.
Good. We do have an audience, by the way.
Yeah, we
from-
do.
Nice support here from Dayton. That's
Yeah,
glad
see,
to have you with
we
us
asked
today.
for a little community pride And Dayton gives it to us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Camille, I want to go back to you. With all the miners and all the immigrants coming through here, going across the mountains, was there justice in the valley in those days, or
There
was it the wild,
certainly
wild
was.
west?
Absolutely. Well, we had a need for judges in this area, and it was apparent when Haskell shot our local sheriff. That was in 1855. So there was a judge, and the judge was Orrin Hyde, and he came from Salt Lake City.
Okay.
And what he did was he came over here and he organized Carson County.
Okay.
And then there was two precincts, the lower precinct and the upper precinct. The lower precinct was the Carson River. The flow of the river was the lower. The upper precinct was Carson Valley. So there was an election in 1855. Murrow Winters won the election, and it was short-lived, but he was our first judge. And there was some controversy there because there was a judge by the name of Ambrose who they thought was the first judge, but there was an issue with signing of the bond. And it was actually Merrill Winter that was our first justice of the peace.
That was a man or a woman?
It was a man.
Man.
Is
It
that
was a
from the
man.
Winter's Ranch?
You never know.
by chance?
You know, and I don't know because it's Winter instead of Winters. So I don't know if there's any affiliation with that family, who is a very well-known family in our community. And Kay is here also.
Did you have a hanging judge down here, like a a hanging tree and that
No,
sort of thing?
I believe there was a hanging, but it wasn't by a judge.
It wasn't my. Oh, okay.
So Judge Winter, unfortunately, his sitting on the bench was short-lived. Around December, he was elected in September of 1855, and by December 1855, he was found dead. He actually drowned in the Carson River.
Oh, by accident or?
It doesn't say. It doesn't say.
It
So-
always goes for the sensationalism.
That's what we're.
Well, you never know. It's a wild,
Well,
wild
you know,
west
and
out
I'm a
here.
facts kind person, so
Yeah.
if there are no facts, I'm going to say that
You-
that was not the
You
case.
don't know for sure. Okay, we'll take it at
Safe.
face value there.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
So,
I'm with the judge.
so anyway, Dayton was, you said, the county seat. This is where justice was taken care of and all that kind of thing. And then Yerington, I understand, became a competitor. Okay. So tell us about this courthouse situation. What happened? There was a courthouse built here.
Yes.
Oh, we had the county seat
You
here.
had the county
Yes,
seat
It was
here.
on Pike Street.
Yeah, but some folks didn't like that idea, or what?
Well,
I-
well, from what I've researched, okay.
I'm gonna have you
we
move
You
actually-
do
forward
it the
just a
nice
little.
way, and I'll do it the way I
what's
feel.
the story here?
Well, of course, as I think I mentioned earlier, that Dayton became the county seat of Lyon
Right.
County,
Uh-huh.
1861.
Right.
Our courthouse here in Dayton wasn't constructed until 1864, right about the same time as Nevada became a state.
Okay, good.
And so it opened up at that time, and there was, of course, the population here reflected the economy that was based around the mining industry. And as that started to slow down, the population changed. So the population at the turn of the century was really dwindling here in Dayton. It might have dropped down to close to 300
Really?
at that point.
Yeah.
And at one point it was up way over 2,000, which was quite a large population that time in history. And so there was some conversation before the year 1909 about maybe moving the county seat to a more prosperous community within the county. And the demographics of the county had changed because by that time, places like Yerington and Mason Valley had now become part of Lyon County. Prior to that, they were Esmeralda. And of course, there was a lot of discussion, the people that in the southern part of the county, because of the way, Lyon County is formed, and quite a long distance, maybe 70 or 80 miles. In those days, it was a long travel to come up to the county seat if you lived in the southern part.
Sure.
So there was a lot of commotion and discussion about, Dayton's population is dwindling, they're not playing the important role, we should have the county seat here. So in 1909, unfortunately, a fire broke out in the attic of our beautiful two-story brick courthouse.
Oh, boy.
Lots of rumors have followed that.
Okay.
And I, much like
Well,
Judge Camille.
That's right.
I
And the
base-
rumors,
I
one
base
of the
my
rumors
facts-
was that it was amazing that none of the files burned
Oh.
because
Yes.
they were removed from the building.
Oh,
Prior to the fire
Well, that was
breaking
nice of
out.
the arsonist
So
to
what
that.
was really nice is that we were able to preserve our records.
That's true.
that's fantastic.
And
Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that.
I think when they realized they weren't going to be able to save the building, although the exterior was saved, all of the interior burned, they decided they needed to focus on saving the surrounding buildings and, of course, the records and furniture that was in the building.
Now, was that close by to where we're sitting right now?
It is a close walk, about a block
Yeah.
away.
It's still there.
No, this is
No,
what
the
happened.
building's not there.
1909, it burned down, and so
Yeah.
that really created a problem for the county government. And so many of the meetings then were moved to the Oddfellows Hall, which is closest to where we are now, right on Pike Street.
Okay.
One of the other two-story buildings
Sure.
that house those kind of activities. And during the next 2 years, there was this discussion back and forth at the state level and at the county level. Should we rebuild the building and continue business as usual, or should we consider this request? And unfortunately, in 1911, the request was voted on, and the county seat was moved to Yerington,
Darn.
where it still remains. So the first 50 years, that was 1911, so the first 50 years of the
Lyon
Lyon
County.
County government,
Yeah.
the business was taken
Yeah.
care of here.
Sure.
So
Well,
we-
you still have a courthouse there, you know.
Here.
Yeah, right here. I mean, which takes care of some
Right.
business,
Yeah.
right, Neil?
So we got as far as 1911 now. Now we're getting close to where the Lincoln Highway would be constructed.
Yes.
And I see that you've got a rather large designated sign, and I recognize
right
that from
outside this
miles
building.
away. Yes. That had to have followed the wagon trains and so on. Any impact there?
Oh, you mean the traffic coming through
The
the
traffic,
town?
was there a little bit more activity with commercial and stuff, means you had vehicle traffic coming through?
I would think so, although, what we know of our main route through Dayton, Highway 50, State Highway 50, wasn't constructed until the 1950s. It's kind of an easy way to think if you think about those numbers, 50 and 50.
Well, he had the split, one going to
Yes.
the southern
Well-
part of California, the other to Land's End,
Oh, you
San
mean as far
Francisco.
as the Lincoln Highway?
The Lincoln
Yeah.
Highway,
Yes,
yeah,
it
no, I
did.
was sticking with the Lincoln Highway.
Oh, the Lincoln Highway. Well, yes. And so the Lincoln Highway, which was also the main thoroughfare through Dayton, followed Pike Street, so it would have gone by the courthouse
Oh.
and some of the other buildings. It weaved its way past here
Do
too.
you have a designation out there? Do you have one of the?
There's a huge sign on
It's
the
right-
side of the building.
Oh, is there? Well, that would help a lot.
Yeah, it was.
It does.
Yes.
All right, listen, we got to take a break here. We'll be back with more Old Tales in Nevada right after we hear from a couple of our sponsors like the Silverland and the Marshall Mint. We're back here on Old Tales in Nevada, past and present. I'm John O'Brien, moderator of our show, and Neil Cobb, the Nevada Historical Society honorary curator. I got it out.
Yes, I are.
I got it out. Camille Veccarelli, she's Justice of the Peace here in Dayton, and Barbara Peck, who takes care of a lot of the historical matters, and both old and new. You try to preserve what's available, not letting too much industry come in and destroy what is of historical value. I would imagine takes up a lot of your time.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so glad to have you with us, and we have a great audience here. We have some
Yep.
homeowners with us, and I would imagine some business people. We have the constable from the court over here, making sure we conduct ourselves in a way that is appropriate for the court, right?
You know, and John, so many of them have positive things to say about why they live here.
Yeah.
And the first thing that's normally popping up is in the conversation is, hey, we're friendly here.
Yeah.
And they certainly are. They've opened up the courtroom for us.
Yeah,
for
and
crying
that
out
can't
loud.
be said about a lot of small communities. Some
It-
communities
it-
are very
it-
closed-minded, not open to
can be.
strangers, you know. I
But
used to
it's
live
a-
in Montana, I can tell you all
Yeah,
about it.
it's a reflection on pride of community.
Yeah, well, I find
It
that
really is.
true of Nevada in general, that even in Reno, there's a multinational group of citizens there. They come from all over. And if you behave yourself well and you're halfway decent, you're accepted rather well, too. In fact, that's probably been the history of Dayton all the way from the beginning, right? With the miners, many different nationalities probably settled here, even some Chinese, right?
Chinese,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. Because they had Chinatown here, right? Not too far from here?
Right, and the reason it was called Chinatown was back in the 1860s, because of the mining operations here and a lot of the prospecting along the creeks, of course, the water being in the desert would dry up. And so to help with that problem, a plan was put in place to divert the water from the river to the mouth of the Gold Canyon. And so it was called the Rose or Reese Ditch, depending on which history book you read the information. And apparently at one point they actually imported about 200 Chinese men to help with the process of building this ditch. And the ditch is actually about 2 miles long.
Wow.
It runs
That's a lot
from the
of work.
bottom
Pretty
of
big
the
project.
hill. It
Yeah,
was a
big
huge
project. With a
project
pick and a
during
shovel,
that
for
time.
sure.
Yes, and actually, I believe from what I understand, and there might be some other folks in the audience that know more of that part of history than I do, but it was used up until the 1960s. The reservoirs where the water was deposited was still used as part of the main water system for the old town of
Oh,
Dayton.
super. Well, great. Yeah. So
About
again,
100 years. That was pretty successful.
Again, a lot of different folks getting along, getting on with business, and getting a lot of things done here in the valley. But you know, there probably was a time where, like you said, the population dwindled because industry went away. So the water being there, that's great. But what is bringing Dayton to the point it is today? It could have just disappeared, you know? What was there a major industry that came in and started and rejuvenated things, or?
I think it's a beautiful valley, number one.
Okay.
We are also a bedroom community to Carson City.
Oh.
And so, you know, what better place to live than in a beautiful valley?
Yeah.
You know, we don't have a lot of businesses here, but we have a lot of beautiful homes. We have a beautiful scenery. It's wonderful to wake up, and I've got to tell you, as a Nevadan, I love the color brown.
Oh, okay.
And when you
Different shades of brown.
every single shade of brown I
You're
love.
wearing brown,
And
actually, yes, you are.
I do. And to me, there's beauty to that.
Yeah.
And then the Carson River with all the cottonwood trees. There's no better place to live, I think.
Now, have
than
you
in
lived
this
here for
valley.
a long time, Kimberly?
We moved here in 1976. My parents bought some property here in Dayton. I think it was population 600 or maybe 800 back then
Back
at the
then,
most.
yeah.
And I was a little devastated.
I can imagine. Where'd you move
What
it
have
from?
you done? Carson City.
Oh,
you
from
know, the big
Carson
town
City.
of Carson,
Okay.
yes. So,
In
you know,
comparison, yeah.
well, I was a little shocked because we didn't even have a high school here at
Wow.
the time. So they bused us to Carson City. So I graduated from Carson High. But, you know, it was a little bit different than what I was used to. And what's funny is that here is where I raised my children. And I never thought that when I was younger, I'm never going to stay here in this podunk town.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Yeah.
And now, you know, in this building, I was at the, they had a fundraiser. And I came to the fundraiser, and I helped raise the money for some of the renovations for the building. And had I known back then that I would be the Justice of the Peace 25 years later,
Yeah.
you know, you just don't know.
Yeah.
But what a beautiful town, and my mother was very instrumental in doing a lot in town, and she brought me with her all the time.
Okay.
And so, which made me be community oriented.
Yeah.
And I have been.
Now, there probably wasn't a lot of shopping and that sort of thing available in Dayton.
Flex Market.
Oh, Flex
yeah,
Market,
Flex
all
You
right.
betcha,
Well,
we had
sure.
Flex Market.
There you go.
We'd
Next to
ride-
Safeway, there's
We'd ride our horses for 2 hours just to get a snow coat.
Really?
Yes, oh,
Wow,
yeah.
how about that?
Oh,
Now,
yes.
where you hail from originally?
Well, I'm
Barbara.
from the East Coast, but I've been
Oh.
in this area since almost 40 years now.
40 years, what would call you a native?
1974, but I did move to Dayton in 1980, and for the same reasons. My son was ready to start school.
Okay.
And I wanted to raise my 2 children in a smaller town environment. I felt at that time the community still had quite a strong agricultural flavor to it, and so I thought it was a very healthy place to raise a family.
So you moved here in 1980, your kid went to school, would he go to UNR?
No, we're talking about starting elementary school.
Oh, elementary school in 1980.
Kindergarten in
Oh,
1980.
1980.
My son was, yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Are they still in the area too?
yes, they both live in Reno.
Live in Reno? Oh, super.
UNR alumni.
But you're still out here, you live in, right
Right here.
One of the old homes?
I did for a while. I moved to a different home in 2002, but I lived right here on Pike Street. Actually, I lived in 2 different residences. My first residence on Pike Street was at the very end of Pike Street, and I rented from the former Justice of the Peace Anderson, Judge Anderson,
what was
at
his-
the end.
Lonnie?
Lonnie Anderson.
Lonnie.
And actually, what he, at that time, they didn't have a justice court facility. And so on his property, he had moved in some old parts of chicken coops and all kinds of different things and made this separate building. When
Wow.
I moved in there in 1980, it had been turned into apartments. So I actually lived in what was used as
the Justice
as
Court.
the Justice Court of Dayton.
Isn't that
for
something?
about a
Improvise
year.
when necessary.
Right. And back in 1980, to be as a renter, it was really difficult to find housing here.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah, there wasn't a lot
There
back
wasn't
in the
a lot.
80s.
Well, you know, that's the thing. When you first moved here, there probably wasn't much here, and then all of a sudden things started to develop. Who were some of the big developers? What made them think that they could build all these homes out here and make a go of it? But for a while, it was going pretty strong out here in the valley, wasn't it? Who was it? Lewis Homes or was it
John Lawrence, I think, was
John
one
Lawrence?
of the
John
earlier
Lawrence,
ones.
Nevada.
Yeah,
Of Nevada,
yeah.
and of course, you know, we had hundreds of acres of agricultural land, and by this time, for whatever reason, a lot of the land wasn't being utilized for that
Right,
reason.
Right, and people were
efficiently.
getting older.
And people were getting older, families, you know, their children didn't want to stay in the agricultural industry, so.
yeah.
So a lot of the land was quickly diverted to residential, commercial
Yeah.
land.
Right on Dayton Valley, Herman Ranch out there
Mm-hmm.
was one of the first pieces of property that was purchased. And it seemed like once the homes started, it just didn't stop.
Right,
It was
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think they could build them fast enough. And then I think there was a lottery.
Oh,
You
okay.
actually had to put your name in for a lot.
Okay.
And then be chosen. It was a lottery type.
Isn't that something? Yeah, they
Because
had the
they
same
were
thing happen
such
in Reno
demand.
there, yeah. So a lot of move-ins in the Dayton Valley area, a lot of people from all over the country. We were talking about being a native or not a native, you know, and a lot of people think being born in the state is the real sign of being a native. But Neil has a different philosophy.
Well,
What is that?
I bring that around because
Yeah.
I'm a native Nevadan too, and very proud of the fact. But it's no big deal when it comes to being a community contributor. If you honestly love the place that you call home, you're as much of a Nevadan as I ever thought of being. Plain and simple.
That's true. That's
That's
very
a
true.
common denominator.
Yeah, that's an excellent thought. But with all these people coming in from all over the country, probably many from California.
Many from
Do they
California.
put a lot of pressure on the local community to change in some way?
Of course,
Yeah.
and put
There-
a lot of stress.
At
Is
one
it
time,
been-
there was Old Dayton and New Dayton.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
Old Dayton and New Dayton.
Old Dayton, New Dayton. In other words, if you're on this side of the road, it was more 21st century or what?
No, there was different lifestyles and so on, but you've been able to mend some fences.
I think we have.
Yes.
Yes, we have. Initially, it did put a lot of stress on the infrastructure, the school systems here, of course, became overcrowded. We were faced with double sessions and, you know, trying to
And
find money to.
Oh, yeah.
And of
and,
course,
you
they
know,
want
to
all the
expand
conveniences, all the amenities that you can possibly dig up. Gotta have a Costco. Where's your Costco?
Yeah, really.
You- in Reno,
And
yeah.
they expected a lot of those things, you know,
Yeah, they
additional.
expect a lot.
And they did. They have.
But why would somebody move to a small town and expect big city amenities?
That's a
I
good
mean,
question.
I mean, I personally wouldn't expect that.
You have the
Yeah.
same thing moving next to a ranch, and then they complain about the cattle and the smell. or
And the
what?
smell,
I
You
yeah.
know, wait a minute. You
Yeah.
know.
Personally, I think it's because of our close proximity to other urban areas.
Right.
I mean, we are such a quick drive
Yeah.
to Carson City, and not, a lot of our residents actually work in Reno. and
Okay,
that's
listen,
great.
let's take a break here and we'll come back for our last segment here on Old Tales of Nevada, Past and Present. Welcome back to Old Tales of Nevada, Past and Present. We're here for our last segment of the show, and it's been a great show. I've learned a lot about the Dayton area. It's things I've never known. First time I ever heard of Dayton was when they were selling homes out here. You know, I said I'm going to come out and take a look. But we talked about a lot of the history. We talked about the different industries in town. One thing we didn't mention was the movie industry was active here for a while. I don't know if it still is, but a pretty famous movie was
Pretty
made.
famous,
Yeah.
1960.
Yeah, what
I
was
tell
it?
you what, one of the favorite spots that Clark Gable ever talked about was Dayton, Nevada.
No kidding.
Really?
You bet.
Yeah. Now,
That
did
and
they
Sticks Ranch.
did they stay? Did the movie stars stay here in town, or
I believe they didn't.
Yeah.
I think they used Reno as their home base.
Okay.
But they spent a lot of time here, and they mingled and sat side by side right on Main Street and Pike Street
Oh,
with
wow.
with the actors.
Yeah. Did they
during
use the old
time.
town, the old part
Well,
of
there
town?
were several places that they did. They actually created at the corner of Logan Alley and Pike Street, across from what was then the Dayton High School.
Mm-hmm.
They created an arena-type
had
environment
the
with
rodeo
bleachers.
scene.
They had a rodeo scene
Oh, no
there.
kidding.
And so that was filmed in that
Wow.
property.
Wow.
And also, I think there were some scenes outside of what we call the Odeon Hall building
Mm-hmm.
on Pike Street. Also, some filming was done there.
Super. And that wasn't the only movie. There was other movies too?
There were some other movies filmed
The
here,
Shootist.
too.
Did you mention, what is it,
John
Honky
Wayne.
Tonk Man?
Honky Tonk Man also was filmed here.
Who was in that? Do you recall?
Clint Eastwood. was
Oh,
here, and
Clint
so-
Eastwood. All
So that film crew also took over the town for a week or two.
Yeah.
It was really fun. They
That's
built
neat.
some, buildings to fill in for their settings and
Yeah.
things like that. A Fred Savage movie was
Oh, yeah,
filmed at
Yeah, the car wreck was right across the
on
street from the
Main
courthouse.
Street.
Wow.
And,
So you never know when you come to Dayton
A lot
what's
of the
gonna happen.
local kids, including my son, were extras in that because
All right.
the characters were younger crowd.
So Dayton, great place to live.
It
Great
is.
place to live.
Absolutely.
Things are happening. It's not, we just don't rest on your laurels, like they say, right? You want to stay a vibrant community, but it sounds like you've got a lot of cooperation within the community with the citizens here. In fact, we have support here for the show, which is really great. But what are you doing as a community to keep things moving forward? You are a bedroom community for Carson, and that's great. That creates some prosperity, but you want to have your own identity like you did in the past. So what are you doing to make that happen?
Well, I know from a historical perspective, part of our mission is to educate and share the rich history that we
Yeah.
have with the new people moving in here.
All right.
And we do that at the schools, at the public schools. We have a school program.
Oh, good.
That shows, points out the interesting parts about Dayton history.
Do the
And
kids
we have
take to
different
that
events.
pretty well? Do
They
they?
love it.
Do they?
They're just amazed,
Oh, super.
because it's a living history. They can walk down Pike Street and Main Street and view the buildings that have been standing there since the
And doesn't that give you a different
1860s.
perspective once you know the history? You don't walk by that building or that place without
right.
thinking of
Right.
something different about it. So that's what's been great about our show. In fact,
Right.
Yeah.
we've learned so many things about different places. I can hardly drive anywhere anymore without getting caught up in.
Yeah.
Well,
in
and
the
during the
history.
walking tour with the kids,
Yeah.
Barbara brings them into the courthouse.
Ah.
Yeah.
And so they ask me questions, and then we show them the holding cells downstairs.
Oh, yeah, that's always
Children
good.
love the holding
Yeah.
No
cells.
wonder the kids are so well
It's
behaved.
just- Yes,
right?
it's
There
amazing.
there was your Chamber of Commerce put out a DVD that was very well done. And
About Dayton.
Yeah, about
Yeah.
Dayton. It really covered all of the high points.
Yeah.
Yes, the history and
Well,
and
I'm
what's
hoping
going
that's
on
volume
now.
1, and there'll be
Yeah.
volume 2 coming up soon.
Well, that one was well done, so.
Right.
What are some of the, you talked about events that help to keep
Oh, sure, you
Dayton
bet.
in front of people. What were some of the events or some of the
Oodles
events
of
that you do
Noodles.
every year?
We have May or June, Oodles of Noodles, and it's a craft fair, noodle contest. So,
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, great.
I get to judge that, which is really nice.
All
There
right,
are
well, you're
perks of being a
Italiano,
judge.
that's why.
So, and then we have Dayton Valley Days, which is coming up in September.
Oh, I saw that sign when I
Yes,
came in,
yeah, in
actually.
just
It's one of the
a couple
signs I
weeks.
did see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be an awesome event, and it is amazing how many individuals come down and spend time down Old Town
Nice.
Dayton.
That's great.
It's just awesome, actually.
That's great, yeah.
The
yeah.
community involvement.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. Now, if somebody wants to come down and take a tour, maybe it's a group, maybe it's individuals, is there any way to arrange tours?
Certainly,
down
through
here?
our
have a
historical
walking tour.
society.
You have a walking tour?
We have a self-directed walking tour, but we
Okay.
also arrange for walking tours through our historical society.
Okay, and do you have a website that people can go to find out
We
about?
do.
And Facebook.
Help me
And
with that
Facebook.
website there.
We'll
yes.
ask the audience for that one, huh? But we'll put it up on the screen
Yes,
for you as
thank you.
well, yeah. We'll just
Yes.
have it up on the screen, so no problem there. Check the website, and there, of course, there's the Chamber of Commerce you have here.
Right.
See, Virginia City doesn't have a Chamber of Commerce, but you guys do, which
We
is
do.
very progressive. That's neat. Do you get good support from the community on that, from the business community about the Chamber?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think so.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
fantastic.
They've got a
So
nice
there's real
membership.
cooperation.
They've got a
there.
great membership.
Yeah, do you have rodeos and things like that as well?
We have in the past. We have a
We have an
rodeo
event
event
center.
center out just on the outskirts of town here.
Okay, and then as far as shopping, amenities, things like that, you have a Smith's here now.
We
Yeah.
do have
Which
a
is my
Smith's.
favorite supermarket, by the way. I
Yes.
love shopping in the Smith's.
Well,
We
that's
have one
because they
down in
give
Reno.
a 10% for gasoline, that's
No,
why.
to give 10% to seniors. That's why-
So-
Always go where I can get a discount, you know? But, is there any new development coming in, like new businesses and things like that, that you know of?
Well, there was supposed to be,
Yeah.
however, I think the deal fell through.
Oh, yeah?
I'm not quite sure because all buildings stopped, but CVS was supposed to come in, a pharmacy.
Okay.
And then with a little strip mall next to it, and that was just on the east side of Smith's.
Okay.
However, that it has stopped, and I'm not sure if negotiations fell through or something's happening. The
Okay.
economy, I'm sure, has a
So
lot
most
to
of the
do with it.
people, go ahead, Neil, I didn't want to interrupt.
Well, on service clubs, my contact was, he's sitting in the audience right now, is William Rogers.
Right.
And of course, he was out there cooking pancakes and stuff at the Silver Dollar Classic, the car
okay.
show they have in Carson City. So you have active service clubs.
Definitely,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
The
they-
Lions
they-
Club, Kiwanis, there's a number of
That's fantastic,
different
because
groups.
a lot of small communities don't get along. You know, we've seen it in our businesses that we are involved with, and it's nice to see a community that works together for the betterment of everybody and brings pride to Nevada because of it. you
Maybe
know?
the federal government will take a hint from you guys.
Well, I have to tell you, I go to a lot of meetings, and where I see the most participation is our historical society
That's
meetings.
fantastic.
There's usually, and I'm always late because of court, you know, as soon as I get out of here, I try to head over there, and if I'm unable to make it, but I usually have to look for a seat,
That's fantastic.
you know, and create a seat. So
That's
this
great.
organization
Yeah, that's
is
great.
really, and they're dedicated.
Yeah.
You know, and they're fun.
Yeah.
They scare me a few times, but, you know, some of the things I don't want to hear.
Well,
but-
it's your claim to fame. I mean, why would you let anything go? You know, living back east like you and I did, every place you go, Washington slept
Right.
here, you know, this was a battlefield, this happened here, there. I mean, they really take care of their old buildings, and I think that's a place where Nevada can improve, because in Reno, a lot of times, and Neil can testify to this, you have to fight to keep an old building standing.
And we've
Yes,
lost
you
a lot of fights,
They've lost a
too.
lot of fights.
But we've been able to have a couple of successes, too.
Yeah, there's some good things. So it's well worth the effort, and it brings us a lot of pride to see people like you being, you know, able and willing and motivated to do that kind of preservation work. You're on like,
And it
what,
really-
3 boards or something?
3 points. And it is difficult to find the funding for
Yeah.
those kind of
Yeah.
projects.
Has that been a problem? I mean, as far as restoration goes, has the state
Oh,
been
it's a
helpful?
battle.
It's a battle.
It's a battle.
Yeah, we were at Bowers Mansion last week on a show, and they had to even shut down for, what, 3 years, Neil, was it? During the downturn?
Yeah, 2 or 3 years
Yeah.
on there with, on the restoration stuff. But they've come out with a little booklet now with the history of Bowers Mansion, and
Yeah.
that's their own little fundraiser because they lost their state.
Now, are there any books available? You'd mentioned that.
Yeah, and the books on.
Books on Dayton, like local authors may
Yeah.
have put
Well,
together?
as I mentioned earlier, the important role that diarists played in recording the facts.
Mhm.
One of them was written by Francis Gore Hazlitt, and
Mm-hmm.
it was published by, I think it was published by maybe Nevada Historical Society, but back in the 1920s. And
Oh.
so we have copies of
Very
of,
important.
of that.
Yeah, were the Growth Brothers in this part of the country?
Well, they were the ones that hit the big
They were
one.
they were
They're a
up,
little
Oh,
bit
but-
north.
they're a little north of
In the
us.
canyon,
Yeah,
yes,
okay,
up
so
the
they
Gold
didn't spend
Canyon,
any
but-
real
So, and those were
fine
the
gun.
ghost papers that recently were obtained by the
Yes.
the Historical Society.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful book that's out now that's by the University Press
Yeah.
that's been put together.
Well, the
Ron
more- you know,
James-
the more-
Your friend Ron James is part of that.
The more
Yes.
people that move to Nevada makes Nevada more important every day. It's just
Yes.
amazing, because Nevada in the old days was known in a negative way, right? In the old days, it was just a desert for most people.
Well,
Being
not
back east-
not to us.
Not to you,
Yeah.
but for many of us who have moved from, from
Well-
other places. But now it's a place people want to move to
Well,
Exactly.
because of history, because of the commerce, because of this.
Yeah, you get used to where you're going. I went up to Washington the first trip that I ever made, And it was so incredibly green that I thought it was artificial.
No, that happened.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, we are out of time for the show today, but we want to thank Barbara
Thank
and
you so
Camille
much.
for being our
It's a pleasure.
Yes. Oh, you guys
Really
are
enjoyed
great.
it.
victims
Thank you.
today.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for all the information about Dayton. It really does give us more appreciation for where we are.
And what about the wonderful community?
In our
that showed
community,
out?
give
Yeah.
yourselves a hand. You were so quiet. Well, that'll about do it for our show today on Old Tales of Nevada, past and present. In the meantime, we want to invite you back for an episode next week. And this is John O'Brien saying goodbye for this week, and have a great Nevada day.